Andreas. It's great to see you.
Likewise, Rhett. Good to be with you.
So just as a reminder, Andreas is the managing director for Norway's International Climate and Forest Initiative, which is also called NICFI. And NICFI is Norway's climate program, which is working to address deforestation and provide sustainable pathways for economic development in tropical countries and for communities in those countries. First, Andreas, what is NICFI and why is this relationship with planet relevant to your work?
Let me just briefly at the outset tell you a little bit about what NICFI does. As you said, we're set up with the mandate to address tropical forest loss around the world. We do that in two primary ways. On the one hand, we're supporting forest countries to improve their land use policies. On the other hand, we're trying to work to reduce the pressure on tropical forests from global commodity markets. So on the first bucket, we have set up large-scale sort of results-based partnerships where we work directly with the tropical forest countries to support their policy implementation and to reward their results in reducing deforestation. So we measure deforestation relative to a historic average, and we pay for reduced emissions relative to that average, and then those resources are then spent to further contribute to the reforms they're doing. And that's typically land use planning, sort of deciding who can do what where, which forests to protect, where should we promote agriculture or intensify agriculture, where are there communities that need to be protected, indigenous lands, and so on. And it's about law enforcement to oversee those regulations, and of course to promote a prosperous economy without deforestation. We also work on addressing deforestation from commodity markets like soy and beef and palm oil and other commodities. We work on including deforestation risk in financial markets. Increasingly, financial markets look at and assess the climate-related risks or financial risks related to climate from the companies in their portfolio. We're working to promote data that can allow that shift in financial markets. And we work on addressing international forest crime by supporting Interpol and UNODC to go after sort of the kingpins behind deforestation. And then as sort of one overarching strategy that helps both on the land use planning and the government reforms and the global market work is the transparency work, where this partnership with Planet and Airbus and KSAT is, I think, a real innovation and a huge step forward.
So what was the origin of this collaboration?
So, we had known for a long time, of course, before we launched this, that satellite imagery was important to all the strategies that I mentioned, and that high-resolution satellite imagery could improve on what we had before. We also knew that this was becoming possible and that the market was moving, and we did consider doing a similar thing a few years earlier. But then when technologies improved and costs came down, we thought it would be strategic for us as a contribution to global good to test the market and see if we could make those types of imagery freely available for everyone to use around for all tropical forest countries. Already before we did this, we had supported a lot of partners that spent a lot of money of the money we provided to them on purchasing these images. Anything from the multilateral agencies that support countries on measuring deforestation to activist NGOs that wanted access to better imagery to hold companies accountable for deforestation. So we knew there was a market already within our sort of partner and user groups. But we did think it was considerably larger than those that were already willing to pay for it. If we were able to sort of break that market and open it up for everyone to access for free. So then we put out a tender to see whether the market could provide this, and this consortium was the winning one.
So it sounds like you saw this as an investment that could really create neighboring conditions for a wide range of players in the space. So this formally launched in September 2020. So it's been a little over a year since it went public. How is it going so far? What's the current state of the program?
So as of early September, we had nearly 8,000 users from, I think, 130 countries. So that's already an indication with rapid growth day by day, hour by hour. We have seen evidence of use cases across all our strategies already. So I think we have confirmed there was a market and a real interest in using it. I think it's too early to see the result in terms of global deforestation rates, but I'm quite confident that it is supporting all the strategies that we are pursuing to address tropical forest loss. We also saw, I think, interestingly, there was a statistic that, because we had thought this would be sort of a complementary data point to many other tools out there, but there was a survey that said that 70% of the users use this as their primary source of imagery. So it seems to have taken, at least from what my team is telling me, more users quicker than they had anticipated.
That's great. I mean, MongoDB is a journalism organization, and we use, I think we're one of the users, and so we regularly use this data for digging into what's happening on the ground with forests and using it for the actual journalistic process. So we've certainly found it very useful ourselves. But I would like to just expand on this a little bit. So you've touched on a few of the groups that are using it, but so I wanted to see if you could expand on a little bit. Like, do you have any examples of governments or say like activists or forest conservation project developers who are using this, and where is that happening? Like what countries and whatnot?
Sure, we're still entering into agreements with countries and governments that will have access to even more detailed raw data to use it for various purposes. But I think of the countries that are already starting to use this in their work, I would highlight maybe Peru, who's been using these data to detect illegal logging and artisanal mining, gold mining, and to detect smaller changes to their forest. So they're using it both to plan operations and to enforce their law. Colombia has made use of the data for their deforestation measurements. I should also mention, we work a lot on carbon markets, which is to enable corporates in any sector that has taken on ambitious climate targets to, in addition to reducing their own emissions in their own sectors, to also participate in protecting forests. And there's a rapidly increasing market for this. They want to see integrity. They want to see that these results are measured in the right way, and that the uncertainty around the estimates is lower. I think what these these images can do is to drastically improve the uncertainty estimates of the countries as they measure deforestation rates, and importantly also to detect forest degradation, where individual trees and smaller patches of forest are lost. So that's, I think, a huge potential that we see. We have launched a big coalition with the United States and the UK, as well as a number of the world's biggest companies to scale up this market. And I think this would be very useful for that as well. Indigenous groups are using this. We have seen, I think there was one example recently I heard from Ecuador, where indigenous community stopped palm oil plantation from entering to their territory by showcasing the imagery to the authorities. I think you mentioned your organization, and congrats, by the way, on all the leading journalism that MongoDB is doing in this space, in investigative journalism. We're partnering with others, and I guess full disclosure, we also support MongoDB, but we support a number of investigative NGOs, as well as journalism through the Rainforest Journalist Network, which is editorially a bit separated from us. So we're not involved in journalism, but they support journalists and around the world to detect or to look at the importance of forests and why it's disappearing and who's behind it, and sort of to drive more attention to the story. Of course, on transparency in general, we had already before this what's called the Global Forest Watch that showed deforestation and had alerts on deforestation around the world, and we had supported them for years. But with this data, that's already included in that tool, which had a lot of uses already, and they're expanding on their products and allowing users to use first alerts and then go and look at the more detailed data to see what's going on. So that's one. And then on the sort of reducing the pressure from global markets, we've seen examples from companies. Unilever was early, but there's a group of companies now looking at how they can use better satellite imagery from this program to oversee their suppliers and to document to the market that they're upholding their zero deforestation commitments as corporates. On the financial sector, we haven't quite seen the results yet, but they are using or consolidating different data sources like Global Forest Watch to get the right risk metrics for companies, company-specific deforestation risks for use by investors. So we know that by including it there, it would actually have an effect there as well. And then lastly, on addressing international forest crime, we have seen UNODC and Interpol use this in their work. Very successful case studies of reducing deforestation in entire districts and provinces in certain countries where they have had operations. And we're seeing activist NGOs also using this as they detect illegal deforestation. So those are sort of some examples from across the portfolio. But I think one of the reasons we did this also was that we knew there were more uses than we could think of, right? So I think as we progress and as the program evolves, I think we will have some surprises of use cases that we hadn't thought of.
What would you say the limitations of this program in terms of translating the availability of this data into policy and on-the-ground action?
So I think better data is a huge important part of this, and I think better data can, by showing the cynicism, the greed, and the forces behind a lot of the deforestation we see, absolutely not all, but a lot of it, keep actors accountable. And so this is a leveler that strengthens the environmental defenders that are at risk and being threatened on a day-to-day basis, indigenous groups that are under threat, and civil society actors that work to keep companies and governments accountable. It's also a tool for governments that want to do something. So it's not just promoting political will, but it's actually supporting the reformers that can rationalize land use planning and enforce the law. So I think, as I said, it supports everything we do, but I do think data, of course, is not everything. You need to build political will in many ways, and this is only an important one, but only one of them.
And do you have does NICFI have other ideas in terms of those key leverage points for kind of overcoming some of those obstacles?
Yeah, so the world, I think, is waking up to this. We have worked on this for a decade, and so has other governments. But overall, it hasn't been the level of effort and attention that this problem has deserved, right? As you said at the outset, we have a few years until this makes it impossible to meet our climate targets or our biodiversity targets, and we will regret not having acted on this problem in a very sort of more concerted way as a global community. I think this is changing. I think the pandemic is one that the attention around destruction of nature and how this could bring about zoonotic diseases is one, and of course the reports from IPCC, the climate panel, and similarly on nature that shows the urgency. So I think the global community is waking up to it. I mentioned the potential to bring in financing from other sectors to forest protection. I think for many of the sectors that you need to transform to solve climate change, there's a profit motive, right? So renewable energy will pay for itself, right? Forest protection will not. It is possible to produce without deforestation, but there is a global good element and there's a public good element that both the world and national economies should reward. So we need finance for that. And then I think there's more work being done now to support indigenous groups as a whole around the world, and that's been proven as a good strategy to reduce deforestation, is to give rights and promote the rights and livelihoods of indigenous groups. So those are some of them, and I think consumers are also waking up. I think companies see that the financial markets are going to penalize them unless they are ahead of the curve, are among the companies that showed how they can survive in a 1.5 degree scenario where the world is taking climate change seriously.
Yeah, I mean, those are all very important points to emphasize. So going back to the data side of things in this specific program, are there any technological gaps that haven't been addressed yet that you feel like would be catalytic in terms of impact? So like a wish list for what could happen next?
There are new technologies in several aspects of our work. Actually, there's interesting work on detecting on wood ID, right? So looking at where a paper product came from. Of course, the use of technology, not the sort of the new hardware, but the use of the technology is changing drastically. And this is one example, I think, the use cases of this program. Then there's artificial intelligence of sort of making predictions of where deforestation will happen. There are companies involved in that. That's quite interesting to follow as well.
Yeah, so on that front, forest losses occurring outside the tropics, especially due to fire. I live in California, and we have a lot of fires right now. Has there been any discussion about expanding the geographic scope of the initiative to include temperate and boreal forests, or is that sort of outside NICFI's focus right now?
Well, it's actually outside of our mandate, so that's part of the reason. We saw that this could have been useful, but of course we're using official development aid, sort of our climate finance and our aid budget, and so there were limitations in sort of our mandate, our narrow mandate, not as a country, but with our budget, that made it that determined the scope. But of course, others can copy it and do it for other regions.
Right. So looking out at the future, we kind of already touched on this from a technical standpoint, but are there any developments on the horizon that you feel like could make this program even more effective and see wider uptake?
So I think it's still early days, right? So it's been about a year, and I think integrating this into the tools that people already use. So we're supporting the development of a lot of other tools I mentioned, for example, for financial markets and so on. So as these tools get better, for example, we support a program called Trace that detects who's buying commodities from which trader and from what producer, from all the commodities that drive deforestation. And so connecting those types of data points with better imagery will give you better risk estimates around agricultural trade and how to assess the risk of financial investments. So integrating in those tools, I think, is important. And then I think there are areas that will benefit from better internet access, rural internet access. That's still a barrier for the program to increase use and user bases, I think.
So taking a step back a bit, so the trends right now for forests and climate seem pretty dire. What gives you hope?
I think what gives me hope is that we know what needs to be done, right? Brazil showed it in the past, and Indonesia is showing it now. And deforestation is drastically down several years in a row. Palm oil deforestation from Indonesia is down. So we know that these policies work. I think we know that they can meet their agricultural targets without deforestation. We also see that the actors are being kept accountable, and so I think there are political economy reasons why there are reversals and changes, policy shifts that go in the wrong direction. But I think we do know a lot more than we did a decade ago about how to address this problem. And I think we're mobilizing a broader set of actors with more urgency than we've seen before. But yes, these numbers we're seeing are unacceptable and should be an alarm for everyone.
So to wrap up, if we're looking at, say, 2025, where would you like to see the NICFI program? Like, what would you like to see of the achievements of the NICFI program to be?
Okay, so I would have liked to see a drastic increase in ambition from forest countries to address deforestation, reflected in their climate targets in the Paris Agreement. I would like those targets to be translated into policies that reform land use, enforce the law, and overcome what we see in some countries, a polarization that is unnecessary. That in some cases have real trade-offs between production and protection. In most producing areas, that is a false trade-off with proper land use planning. So I want to see those reformers supported and successful. And to see that happen, I think we'll have to see an increase in finance from the global community. So I think the early success of the LEAF coalition, which is the name of what I mentioned, our collaboration with the United States and the United Kingdom and a bunch of big companies, that needs to mobilize a lot more finance from the private sector to support those countries in that transition. And then I think we need to see a step up of action from traders and consumer goods companies to take action on tackling commodity supply chain related deforestation, helped by market demand regulations from the EU and other markets that say that we no longer want to import products that stem from deforestation or illegal deforestation. So I think we will see a lot happen in the next few years. I also hope to see more markets on the demand side take action. We've seen the EU take action. I think there are other markets that will be important to come into this as well.
Well, thank you, Andreas, so much for for having this conversation with us, and also thank you to Planet for providing this platform for us to talk. So thank you very much, and it was great to see you again.
Thank you, Red.